Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Hello everyone, I'm Atria Widyastuti from B class of English Education Program at the University Tegal. This time I will present my paper with the title is The Implementation of Performance-Based Assessment in the Teaching of English for 10th grade students of senior high school. Okay. Before I start, I would like to say, as the writer and the presenter, I realized that this paper or this presentation video is still imperfect and full of flaws. So I'd like to apologize beforehand if there is any lags or errors. And this presentation video hopefully can be useful for everyone who needs it. Okay, now I will start my presentation. And there are 3 contents of this presentation video. First is introduction, and then discussion, and the last is conclusion and suggestion. Okay, now I will start with the first chapter, which is introduction, and I will start with the background of the problem. Teaching and learning process is an action necessary to accomplish a purpose of education. According to Torquay and Lasser Freeman, the main purpose of English language teaching is to make students able to use the target language for communication. The purpose is considered successful if they can communicate effectively in the target language. And to measure whether the purpose has been achieved, it needs assessment. Beforehand, I will explain what is assessment. So, assessment is an ongoing process of evaluating learners' ability or skill after process of teaching and learning. By assessment, learners can get feedback of what they have learned, and they are expected to be able to apply knowledge in their real life. And therefore, an assessment should be meaningful and can be applied in learners' real life. So, in English class, assessment plays an important role. At present, most senior high schools have already applied curriculum 2013. It means that authentic assessment, including performance-based assessments, are supposed to have been applied. This paper is trying to discuss how the use of performance-based assessments applied by the English teachers. And next is discussion with the theoretical basis. The first to discuss is the authentic assessment. According to Wiggins, in 1998, assessments are authentic if they test the learner's knowledge and skills in real situations, promote doing a task rather than reciting memorized content, and give students the opportunity to rehearse, obtain feedback on, and strengthen performances and products. Therefore, authentic assessments provide an alternative for traditional evaluations and include tasks that are relevant for both the teacher and the students. Teacher can use different types of authentic assessments like portfolios, interview-based assessments, play-based assessments, cooperative group assessments, experiments, projects, and student narrative, or etc. And next, we will discuss the performance-based assessment. Performance-based assessment is a method used to evaluate how well a student has mastered the material that has been presented in class. That is according to Espinosa in 2015. So students demonstrate their real learning and understanding by performing tasks or creating products. Performance-based assessment requires students to use higher-order thinking skills like analysis and then synthesis, problem-solving, and critical thinking in order to create the responses or perform the task. Okay, the next is the condition of the use of performance-based assessment in real classrooms. It is from Yani in 2017, who conducted a study which involved 15 senior high schools in West Java, claims that almost all the respondents have positive attitudes towards the principle of speaking tasks that can be applied in performance-based speaking assessments. However, they admit that they apply the imitative speaking such as repetition and read aloud tasks more frequently if compared to the other more communicative speaking tasks such as oral presentation, interview, and so on. In the classroom, the purposive sampling teachers require their students to perform interactive speaking tasks like dialogue, role play, and an extensive speaking tasks like oral presentation in pairs or groups. Among the three types of speaking tasks, only the oral presentation task is considered authentic and meaningful because the students performed it without memorizing any scripts. And next, from Prastikawati in 2018, Prastikawati conducted a research at a high school in Semarang. Performance-based assessments which had already been applied were role plays, writing, sample, and retelling. Almost of the 30 students considered that performance-based assessment can improve their English skills and confidence instead of traditional assessment. 24 of the 30 students also claim that traditional assessment is still inadequate to activate their English skill. In short, 80% of 30 students gave a positive responses on the use of performance-based assessment. Okay, that's it for the condition of the use of performance-based assessment in real classroom. Okay, now I will explain the steps of discussion. First is the characteristic of performance-based assessment. O'Malley and Valdez-Pierce in 1996 assert that some of the characteristics of performance-based assessment are constructed responses. Performance-based assessment requires students to construct responses, provide an expanded responses, engage in a performance, or create a product. And then the second is higher order thinking. In performance-based assessment, students typically uses higher levels of thinking in constructing responses to open-ended questions. The next is authenticity. Talks are meaningful, challenging, and engaging activities that mirror good instruction or other real-world contexts where the student is expected to perform. And the fourth is integrative. The tasks call for integration of language skills, and in some cases for integration of knowledge and skills across content areas. And the last is process and product. Procedures and strategies for deriving the correct responses or for exploring multiple solutions to complex tasks are often assessed as well as or sometimes instead of the product or the correct answer. The next is types of performance-based assessment. O'Malley and Valdez-Pierce give the types of performance-based assessment as the following. First is oral interview. Teacher asks students questions about personal background, activities, reading, and interests. And then next is story or text retelling. Students retell main ideas or selected details of text experienced through listening or reading. Third, writing sample. Students generate narrative, expository, persuasive, or reference paper. Next, projects or exhibitions. Students complete project in content area, working individually or in pairs. And then next, experiments or demonstration. Students complete experiment or demonstrate use of materials. And last, constructed responses item. Students respond in writing to open-ended questions. Okay, the next is the advantages of performance-based assessment. Here are some benefits of performance-based assessment. First is students who are more actively involved in the learning process absorb and understand the material at a much deeper level. Performance-based assessment looks at a higher order thinking skill and practical application as well as other features such as time management and clear communication. The second benefit is performance assessment measures whether students can apply the knowledge appropriately in various contexts. And the third is performance-based assessment allows students to monitor themselves. The next is the implementation of performance-based assessment. And here are steps of how to implement performance-based assessment. First, state the overall goal of the performance. For example, you may assess how children interact with other children. You also may use informal assessment to assess a student's typical behavior or work habits. Next is specify the objectives or criteria of the performance in detail. When you need to do this, Irasian suggests that you can complete this step with identify the overall performance or task to be addressed, and then perform it yourself or imagine yourself performing it. And then next, list the important aspects of the performance of product. Try to limit the number of performance criteria. And then, if possible, have groups of teachers think through the important behavior included in a task. And then express the performance criteria. Don't use ambiguous words that cloud the meaning of the performance criteria, and arrange the performance criteria in the order in which they are likely to be observed. Because having clearly defined criteria will make it easier for you to remain objective during the assessment. And the next, prepare students for performance in stepwise progression. It will help them get used to thinking in a new way and reduce anxiety that might affect their overall performance. Fourth is create performance rubrics. With rubrics, you can define the different level of proficiency for each criterion. Like the process of developing criteria, you can either utilize previously developed rubrics or create your own. For example, you may want to use the following scale like word, sentence, page, chapter, or book. However, words such as novice, apprentice, proficient, and excellent are frequently used. Next is assess the performance. You can give feedback on a student's performance either in the form of a narrative report or a grade. There are several different ways to record the results of performance-based assessment. First, you can use checklist approach, and then narrative anecdotal approach, or rating scale approach, and last memory approach. And the next is conclusion and suggestion. In conclusion, teachers generally find performance tasks useful in improving productive skills like speaking and writing. Moreover, the students' response on the use of performance-based assessment was good. Tasks provide a meaningful purpose and context to use English communicatively. They also believe tasks can be very motivating when students work on topics that particularly interest them. Teacher further suggests that tasks enrich students' vocabulary and help with retention, and they help the students become autonomous learners. And next, for the suggestion, it is necessary for the teachers to look at what is happening from time to time in order to improve the teaching and learning. Also assessment strategies used in class. In that way, it will be possible to take consideration students' cognitive development, emphasize what learners can do instead of what they cannot do, diagnose teaching and learning problems, and focus on the continuous improvement of each learner, which will lead to the student's success. And last but not least, it is time to use authentic assessment such as performance-based assessment more, since they are practical tools that can be used more to improve education and positively impact teachers and also learners. Okay, that's it for my presentation. If you have any comments, criticisms, or suggestions, you may drop it down below in the comments. And thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye.